rest of it.
Recording in progress.
Okay, sorry, I forgot about it too. So, Mary, did you have your hand up? You wanted to say something?
No, I'm just typing a lot in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Just briefly, my son is in Wisconsin as a residential school, and like Kamala, my son has a lot of those same challenges. Right now, we're talking with families in Northern Illinois that if we built modern, appropriate housing, that maybe there would be less staff necessary. So, a lot of these group homes aren't appropriate for our kids. Our kids will need a lot of space. They need a lot of place to run, and they need space so they don't irritate the neighbors because they vocalize so loudly. And there's just a lot of things that I think could be solved by modern building. The bathrooms, for example, heat lamps, and just all kinds of things. And my concerns about the ICFs is that they're old buildings and that they wouldn't have the modern conveniences that might ease the sensory needs of my son. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thanks, Mary. So I was just gonna say, so my son's in a group home, and his staff is great, but I mean it's so isolated, and they're not really part of the community at all. In fact, the community doesn't like them. They hate having the group home there, and every group home he's been in, they fought it. But so it is just a little ironic to me that he's supposed to be part of the community, but they really don't want him in their community. It says. Anyway, how about Sybil? Did you want to say something? I think Sybil's here.
I think we lost Sybil.
We lost Sybil.
Hopefully
okay.
She'll be back. Rosalind,
okay.
there are a couple of people with their hands up in the chat, if you can look up there and see.
Okay, hold on a sec. So what's
my other sibling, my surviving sibling, and Sam and Adrian.
Okay, well we'll do sibling first. How about Marty?
Okay, thank you. There were a couple of things I wanted to say. The first, as to the waiver, when you sign the form, there's a representation there that you've been offered ICF care. They tell you in most states, you got to sign this, don't worry about that, because you won't get care at all if you don't sign the waiver. So in most cases, people who sign the waiver have not been offered ICF care. The other point I wanted to make is ICFs, I'm just looking at a quick list of requirements: staffing, governing body and management, client protections, client behavior, and physical environment. But ICFs get regular surveys to make sure they comply with all of these requirements. So it's a much higher standard than a group home. A group home may offer some of what an ICF offers, but it's not required, and nobody comes by and checks.
Okay, thanks, Marty. Okay, Sam, did you want to speak?
I'd like to try to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks. I'm way out in the hinterlands. It's great to see so many people on this call. I think most folks on this call know that VOR advocates for folks with IDD in a broad range of environments, but this particular call and meeting is about ICFs. So I just wanted to kind of try to sum up what I think are the main things going on here. The title for tonight is Why ICFs Matter. And I think I've heard at least 5 or 8 people speak in different ways. We all agree why they matter. They provide a level of care and care of a nature that often or almost always can't be found elsewhere. And for some people, it is not only the best choice and not only the right choice, but the only choice that will lead to survival. But the other reason why ICFs matter is that we've lost most of them. We continue to lose them. This was Joe Valenti's point earlier on. We're losing them for two reasons that are closely related. One is closure, and two is that, to the best of my knowledge, having been involved for, I guess, about 10 years now, I'm not aware of any state in this country that relatively reasonably easily lets anybody into ICF care. And I'd love to hear the counter experiences to that. But to the best of my knowledge, it's a variation on a theme. And even in states, I don't know if Rita Winkler's on the call, but even in states like Illinois, that some ICFs have done very, very well and are thriving and are growing, I don't know that it would be easy for a family in Illinois to place their loved one, because they have to make the decisions in ICF care. So I think in the end run, we can talk about a lot of things, but if we're talking about why ICFs matter, we have to grapple with those related realities, that they are closing because people leave them, but people don't go in.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Well, there are some going into Murray Center. I think people heard about Choate in Illinois, all the abuse that's been in the papers, and the Illinois papers a lot. So some of those people, are going to go to Murray Center. Is Rita here? I don't know if she's here or not. Okay, she could talk about it if she's here. But how about Sybil? I have you on the list that you would like to talk about the ICFs. Are you here? Okay, maybe not. Okay. Okay, who else would like to say something about ICFs?
I have my hand up.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Sybil. I'm back on now.
Okay, so who's speaking?
This is Sybil. I said that I'm not muted.
Okay. Okay,
I'm
so go
sorry.
ahead.
I was on a bus trip and they made me shut off my call. So
Oh, okay.
Actually, I'm driving home now.
Okay.
Yes, my son lived in the Glenwood Resource Center, which is an ICF, one of two in the state of Iowa, for 40 years, nearly 40 years. And then about a year ago, the Department of Human Services just decided to close it down. We received an email that they're going to close it in June of 2024. And, good luck finding someplace. Well, there have been some people who have found a place for their loved ones. But for the most part, the ones that were left, there's no place for them.
So where
They're
do they
fragile.
go?
Well, my son is in a nursing home in Glenwood. Not the best idea, but at least they didn't move him 4 or 5 hours away, because there are no ICFs in Southwest Iowa. No big ones. There's some private ones, but they're, what my experience has been, they're pretty poorly run. So it's just been a heartache. And Seth was in the hospital with a bad seizure disorder in the summer. And when he was in the hospital, Glenwood wouldn't take him.
Okay. So when the ICF closes, what do they tell the people to do as far as finding services for their loved one?
Anybody in Glenwood Resource Center for a dozen years. Beautiful 1,000 acres of land, and it's just impossible to get services there. So I don't know. It's heart aching and heartbreaking, and it's such a worry. I guess I'm grateful that at least the nursing home, some of the people in Glenwood at the nursing home have cared for him if they were former GRC employees. So, you know, I worry about him every minute of every day.
Okay, so Mary Neff asks, it would be the state's responsibility to place those residents at Glenwood, right?
Right.
Are they supposed to find a place for them?
Well, in the past, yes, but in the last dozen years or more, they wouldn't let anybody in, no matter what the severity.
No, but once the Glenwood closes, I mean, they have no responsibility to find a place for them?
No, they want no responsibility. None.
Oh my.
Awful.
They're
That is
gonna
awful.
turn off the light and turn their back on the whole kit and caboodle.
Wow. Well, that is cold.
It is cold. And you
And
know,
they're
it's like
giving away all the facilities to other organizations. Isn't that right?
not even
So
well, that was the plan, but right now everything seems to be stalled. I'm going to meet with the committee next week to see what kind of what they've come up with, what to do with, you know, there are 40 beautiful cottages. There are historic buildings that have been there since the place was founded in the 1800s as a Civil War orphanage. So some of the buildings are it's an amazing place. Like I said, there's 1,000 acres, and so a group of architects came up with what we could do with it, but it did include tearing a lot of it down.
Okay.
Hi,
Mary had
this is
another
Rita Winkler.
question.
I'm finally on the meeting.
Oh, Rita. Okay, so I'm just gonna
I
finish
am.
with Sybil. So Mary wants to know, can't you sue the state of Iowa?
Oh boy.
No problem.
When, you know, I don't know that I can, but that's what we wish we could do. But you know, the Department of Justice, they said they had to close it because the Department of
Hello?
Hello, you still there? I think we lost you a little bit.
I'm here.
Okay,
Can you hear me now?
yeah, now we can. Sure, go ahead.
So should we sue the state? Boy, we've checked with attorneys. Nobody wants to do that.
Oh, that's
You
too
know.
bad. Oh,
And then,
my
you know,
goodness.
just boom, 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 150 of the most fragile Iowans were evicted, and 500 very well-trained DSPs were out of a job. Just
Okay,
like that.
so Adrian Benjamin said, class action suit. So,
Well,
okay. I know who wants to have to go through all that, but
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm too old for that. If this had happened 40 years ago, maybe.
right. It's just, you know, we all go through so much and then have to do
Yeah.
this. I don't know. You know, we get tired after a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. So
You
I'm
bet.
gonna have Rita Winkler speak.
Well, I am so sorry because I extra came home early from visiting my brother at his group home because I was going to be on the call, and it is absolutely my fault. I did not
Okay.
look at the time right. But I can tell you, and I wish you'd called me sooner, Hugo, but anyway, Illinois actually is doing well. I mean, we are closing one of our developmental centers, and not closing it, but they're moving the individuals with DD. That's the Schultz Developmental Center, that they are allowing them to move to another state-operated developmental center. Yesterday, we had several
Excuse me,
legislators, very bipartisan.
When you're echoing, Rita.
1 second. Can
Oh.
everybody mute their phone or their email if they're not talking? Their link if they're not talking. Thank you. Go ahead, Reed.
Okay, I hope this is better. But yesterday we had a group of bipartisan senators and representatives come to Murray, look at Murray, and our new director has, and this has really been her goal, to have senators and representatives come and look at the state centers, because they said many of them have, quote, been brainwashed by some advocacy groups such as the Arc of Illinois, telling them, things are still like Willowbrook and how terrible they are. They chain people to the walls. And if they don't see a center, they really don't understand what it's like. All the people who came, well, of course, Rep Meyer came, he's been there numerous times, but they were very impressed. And the thing that they were very impressed was the different levels of individuals we take care of. The place was clean, the individuals were busy, occupied. And I looked to see, and we have in the last 5 years had 170 individuals move to Murray. And out of those, I think 85% are duly diagnosed. And I didn't get the account of how many, but the vast majority are male between the age of 18 and 25. And the department is really realizing, the director has said, this is not going to stop. We're going to have more and more individuals like this. Now they are opening up more group homes, but there's kind of been a backlash from even people in the community because of the lack of oversight for the small group homes. My brother lives in one, it's excellent, but they self-police. So if you have a good provider, it's going to be good, but if you don't, we've gotten several individuals in that had lived in small group homes that came to Murray to die. And they really were not dying, they were starving to death. They had not been fed. And what was very concerning to us is our PNA, who's called Equipment for Equality, they knew of these places and did nothing. Rep Meyer has really been in the state to change how the CILAs, that's what we call our group homes, are, how the oversight on them, because it's really very lax. Our new director has told us if we know of any CILA group home that isn't good, we are to call her directly. And Rep Meyer just yesterday worked with someone who, the young gentleman was in the group home in a very bad provider, same one we've had trouble with, ended up beating up another resident, ended up in jail. Well, the court didn't want to send him to jail. They're trying to find other care for him. So Rep Meyer worked on that. But I think we're still fighting in Illinois, like everyone, against the ARC, against our Equip for Equality. The latest thing Equip for Equality has done now is if in our guardianship papers, it doesn't say guardians have a right to placement, which is in the state law for Illinois, then Equip for Equality is wanting to go and talk to individuals and try to convince them to move, because they're saying guardians don't have that right. So the guardians now are in a big rush to get that changed in their guardianship. So that's what we're doing. But Illinois, for right now, I mean, we have over 1,600 people in our state centers, and that's staying really stable. So and I will say our governor's spending money on them, and, the people in the community don't like that because they say our centers are too expensive. But the state is also spending money on our group homes also. So they are some kind of push, money. But our biggest thing now, again, is, of course, they want to close the sheltered workshop, and we're all working on that. And so far it has not passed, and that's another bipartisan effort by Rep Meyer and a Democrat to work on keeping the minimum or sub-minimum wage. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And I will say the Murray Parents Association, we advocate continually. We head to our Capitol at least 3 times a year, hand out some to all our legislators. We are always working on doing this. And I've been.
So I have a question. I mean, is Equip for Equality going to talk to these people like my son and say, you don't want to have a guardian?
Yes, and according to Equip for Equality, speak to anyone who lives in an ICF or an SODC or a state center. And what they can do is just go up and say to them, would you like to move? Well, of course, many of our individuals are going to say yes, because they don't really know what they're talking about.
Of course not, yeah.
No, and so they were really hassling one gentleman at Murray that always says he wants to move. He's failed in 4 or 5 group homes. His mother does not want him to move. And finally, they did have a huge meeting with everyone, and they've kind of backed off. but they're just really mad that people don't want to move from the state centers. Well, as we've always said, if the group homes were able to take care of our individuals, many of them would move, but they're not. So E3 is just mad that nobody will move their kids. So they've been putting a lot of pressure on them.
I mean, it sounds like they're kind of bullying these.
They're very, very much bullying people. Yes, they are. They are very, and they're also bullying like the social workers at the centers. You know, for a while they were trying to give them a quota of how many people they had to move each year. Well, that has stopped
wow.
because that's so totally just wrong. So that's stopped. But we are holding our own, and you know, I still get calls continually for people wanting to move their child to Murray. And what's been real interesting is people who have their entire life said, my kid is never moving to an ICF. They are going to live at home or they're going to live in a small group home. Well, then their kid grows up and they kind of figure out either because of medical reasons or behavior reasons, there's no way they are going to be, you know, able to live in a small setting like that. So especially with our kids with the very, very high behaviors. We talked to someone the other day and at our meeting, and I believe they had something over like 300 providers across the state had said no, they would not take their son. So he is now living at Murray, doing very well, but it took a lot of fighting and whatever to get him moved to Murray. So I think realistically, even the department's realizing some of these people cannot live in a group home.
You know, and there's another issue too, and I think some of the medical issues. I know that's been an issue with my son in his group home. You know, he's had a couple medical emergencies, and it was, you know, scary, you know, because there was only one person there.
Absolutely.
So, oh, I'm muted. Okay. Anyway, thanks, Rita.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so sorry I missed this whole meeting, which I really wanted to make, but I just told my husband I have too many irons in the fire this week and last week because Rep Meyer is keeping us busy. We've had visitors. We've had just so many things going on, but it's all good. And thank you, Rosalind, for doing this.
Oh, and thank you for everything, of course.
And
Okay,
I'm going to mute myself now.
Okay, so who else wants to say something? We got about 5 or 6 minutes.
Rosalind, Adrian, and Jill have both had their hands up
Oh, they have.
for quite a
Okay,
while.
how
Yeah.
about Adrian?
Thank you.
Oh.
Hi, am I muted? I don't know.
No, you're fine.
Oh, good. Hi, my name is Adrienne
Hi.
Benjamin. I live in Connecticut.
Okay.
My daughter has profound autism and ID. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, she has a place to live. She lives in a group home. I requested an ICF, the regional center, 2 years ago when my husband died, but that wasn't even an option. And I wasn't in a position to fight for it because they're not admitting anybody in. But the reason I want to talk to y'all is there's a group called the Interagency Autism something, IACC. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's a federal organization that was designed supposedly to give advice to the government on how to deal with autism. It's called the Interagency Autism Coordinating Committee. It's part of the Department of Health and Human Services, and they have a time for public comment. Now, I don't think everyone in VOR has a child with severe, profound autism, but many of us do. So we can write letters. So they have if you go to their website, you can write a statement about the kind of needs your child has and why the current system of group homes is not adequate. In fact, talking to this group is sort of like talking to the enemy. They are a lot of high functioning, I know, you know, but if you write the letter and it'll get into the public record. So if 3 people write letters saying, what about the severe autistics? What about the profound autistics? What about the nonverbal? What about the people that aren't toilet trained? What about, you know, at least we'll get it out there for the public record. Because supposedly, whatever government agency reviews these things, it will get the word out. The National Association of Severe Autism, National Council on Severe Autism always encourages people to write up, you know, a short story about your kid's actual needs and actual challenges. And so does the Profound Autism Alliance. And I think it's just a shot to tell the truth, tell the story. all kids with autism, they're not all doctors and lawyers and Elon Musk, all the nonsense that we see on the television and in the public media. So, but we have to tell the story because our kids are usually invisible. You know, we know they're pretty much invisible. I can't really take my daughter anywhere without staff with me, and I don't have staff with me. So we have to make our kids visible. But it's just a chance. It's an opportunity because they're meeting soon to make a public comment. And if you look up iacc.hhs.gov, that takes you to the site. And I watched one of these meetings for many hours once, and I was screaming and pulling my hair out because they really are. They're sanitizing autism. They're denying the reality. It's just enraging. But all we can do is tell our truth, and maybe it'll have an impact in 5 years or 1 year. I don't know.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Adrian.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Adrian, 1 second. Becky Japko has said that the deadline to submit comments to the IACC was 9/20. Today's 9/21. But I would encourage people to send them anyhow. And
I just heard about it yesterday, so that's not good.
Yeah, that's how they work. But
take 5 minutes.
If you
Takes
can
5
put that
minutes.
again. Oh, Mary Neff put it in the chat again, so that's good. So
Okay,
if everyone
thanks,
can
Mary.
look at that and
I
do
hope
it.
she's wrong that it's actually 9:26. Thank you. Yeah, we'll do the best we can, right?
Right.
Always fighting, always advocating.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you. It's really hard to hear these stories. Really hard.
If I can
Okay.
remind everybody before we finish up for tonight, if you could send your stories to us too. A couple of paragraphs, a picture of your loved one, why the ICF is important to you and your family. We're going to try to put together a lot of them in the VOR voice that we're coming up with. So this would be really great for us. It's a great way for you to get your story around to our other families and so on. So
Thank you. I'm going to have to go take my dog on a walk. So it was lovely seeing everybody and hearing stories. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye, Adrian. Jill,
Bye.
did you want to, maybe we'll end with Jill. Jill, did you
Yes.
want to say something? You had your hand up.
Yeah, I didn't want to take, I mean, my son is not in an ICF, but my son Danny, who died last October, was in a group home with his brother Ian. They're both profoundly intellectually disabled, and the group home is adequate, I would say. Not great, but adequate, and certainly was better than, especially during COVID, for them to be living in a where they really had some sort of protection, and very quickly had vaccinations and that kind of thing. But the problem with, there are a lot of people, parents who try to get together and with ideas about having their own communities and whatever, and that they're very expensive. Takes years to plan something like that, and then they spend most of their time fundraising after if they are successful in opening a place. So I mean, a great deal of the funding, a portion of it comes from Medicaid, but Medicaid is not going to pay for everything that the parents want, and the reason for them building these communities. But there's 2 places in Michigan that are not ICFs, but they come close to doing what an ICF would, and one of them is called Harbor House Ministries in Jenison, Michigan, where they have 3 12-bed group homes on a few acres of land, and they do a really good job, and also they get lots of money, and I don't know where they're getting it, but the other place is Benjamin's Hope, which is in Holland, Michigan, and that's a number of the people are autistic, severely autistic, and then some who are probably more in the moderate range. But it's a beautiful place, and they have it's group homes that are in the same community, and the only reason they've been able to get away with it because you try to do something like that and immediately you're attacked by the ARC. But they live in Western Michigan, and they're in an area that's very conservative, and they're fine with ignoring organizations like the ARC. So they allow these things to happen and get a lot of support from their communities. In other places, it's not as easy. But I think that it's very important to maintain the government funding of these facilities, because I think in Michigan, a lot of times autism, for instance, is treated as a psychiatric disability, which means that for some kids, they have some psychiatric facilities that might be able to take them in, but they're not, I don't think they're as good as the ICFs would be. And they're not necessarily built for people with intellectual disabilities. So I think my son Danny would have done better in an ICF, considering all his medical problems, because he had seizures that would he at times it was like once a week he'd go to the emergency room for his seizures. And I think that could have been handled much better with the medical supervision that you'd get in an ICF. And also the expense was, I'm sure he must have been one of the top people in the county as far as Medicaid expenditures, but they don't look at they don't look at the medical part of Medicaid combined with the group home expenditures. So anyway, that's all I'll say. There might be somebody who has something else to say about ICFs. Do that.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak tonight? We're running short on time. I would love to hear from more people. I know Dave Castle has spent the day meeting with his representative in Massachusetts, other people, and so on. Dave, do you have anything to bring?
Well, yeah, I noted that Irene is also on the call here. She has been trying to get her son into the Rentham Developmental Center in Massachusetts, and the same problems. They're not admitting people. So we talked to the new chair today of the Disabilities Committee, the new House chair in the Massachusetts legislature, to try to bring him up to speed on the situation. We have 2 ICFs left, and the census in both are diminishing. They are on track for closure, and we tried to explain to him the disaster that would result. So we're in the same position. I think my understanding of the waiver, HCBS waiver, is that it is a waiver of the ICF active treatment regulations. So that's how I always understood it. So they continue, that allows them to continue to receive Medicaid, so they don't have to meet those standards. But anyway, that's Irene, if you wanted to say anything. Irene is.
There's a problem in the HCBS system in Massachusetts. It's imploding. A lot of people are unserved in Massachusetts, and they would rather tell families, no, you can have nothing, to send them to the ICF. When we're talking about, well, what does the ICF mean to you? It's not just, if I send my kid there, things will be better. Here, the private providers are like kings and queens. They do whatever they want to do. They break all kinds of laws. They break all the HCBS Medicaid rules. If they had some public competition, I believe the entire system would get better. So that's another function that the ICFs have. But of course, it won't happen because they won't let anybody in. And it's not just me, there are a few other families who are trying to get in, and we're just doing whatever we can to do this, but it's an uphill battle. I'll tell you, it's an uphill battle.
Well, we certainly all understand that, Irene. Thanks. Thanks, Dave, and
you.
thanks, Irene.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see if there's
Sarah
anyone
Ross.
else.
Yes, Sarah Ross.
Okay.
What I wanted to say is I'm from Illinois, and my sister lives in a ICF state facility. We had tried the community for her, and she was in the ICF. We tried the community, and it was a failure. The state wouldn't place her back in at the state facility for a 2-year period of time where she was wasting away in a nursing home. And we finally were able to get her back into the same facility that she was used to living. She couldn't cope or handle, making her own decisions. And when she did, they were totally inappropriate. So I've seen both sides of the world and also with her living at home before my parents found placement for her. So we all have different needs at different times. So thank you.
Thank you. And Marty, did you have something to say?
Two things now. I wanted to comment on the different things at different times. That's true for many people. Some people have extreme needs from the get-go, but that's why VOR advocates for a spectrum of care. If possible, when people are in group homes and it's appropriate, that's great. As they age, they may need a higher level of care, and that's the spectrum. I don't know if people have said much during this call about disability rights. And I heard references to the ARCs, but everyone should be aware that Disability Rights is an organization that is very active in trying to close ICFs and quote unquote institutions. And if you look at who your P&A is, Protection and Advocacy Organization, I would think by now in most states, and Hugo can correct me if I'm wrong, the P&As are staffed by DR people. That's certainly true in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And reading as much as I can of what Hugo publishes, I believe there's one state that got their DR thrown out as the P&A. Hugo, am I right? Hugo said
They haven't succeeded in throwing them out yet, but the state legislature did look into replacing them and made a recommendation to the governor to do so. It's Ohio, and it's the only state where they do actually have a law where the P&A is held to account every 2 years in front of the state senate. And we'd love to see a law like that happen in about 49 other states and a few territories.
Is that law relatively recent?
Yeah, it's a couple of years old.
Yeah.
They've had this once or maybe twice. Is Harris still on? Harris knows more about Ohio. There he is. Can you tell us? Thank you.
Yeah, basically, because of a lot of complaints and because of a lawsuit that Ohio had to settle with Disability Rights Ohio, which is our P&A, Protection and Advocacy people. Part of the settlement feathered Disability Rights Ohio's treasury, but there was one thing that was said by Judge Sargis, the federal judge. And that was, he required the state assembly to have a joint session of the House and Senate every 2 years to hear the opinions of parents and guardians and others as to whether or not Disability Rights Ohio was doing their job. That hearing was last November and December. I was there. In about February or March, the Joint Assembly made the decision to recommend to the governor, Mike DeWine, that he eliminate Disability Rights Ohio and replace them with another entity. It's still on his desk. As you can imagine, there's probably a lot of backstage stuff going on within the disability rights community, but to the best of my knowledge, we are the only state right now that has actually advised the governor that we want our protection and advocacy people gone.
Thank you, Harris. Okay, let me just.
Can I ask one thing? And
Sure.
that is,
Okay, it's muted.
Be honest,
um,
because you know what I used to say about VOR. You need.
hello, could whoever's talking please mute themselves?
Just more about Illinois.
Hello, could whoever's talking mute themselves, please?
Yeah, please mute.
It's that important, but it's very important to get the word out about these situations. And the only way you really do that, apart from going somewhere and getting arrested, is to find sympathetic journalists, which is very hard and a two-edged sword, because you never know if somebody's gonna turn on you and listen to the other side. And what I'd love to know, and people can just send anything they have to Hugo, who may kill me for this, if any of you have seen articles that talk about what ICFs have to offer and the limitations of group homes, it would be very useful to have a collection of them to be able to show other people in the press so that they see that this is something journalists can and do think about and write about, because we've got to get their sympathy in their pens.
Okay, thanks.
If I may, I worry about the press. We've had many bad encounters with them, and you never know what you're going to get. But one person who interviewed me for an article that he told me was being written by, was being paid for by the Arc of Connecticut. When he asked me to be in it, he said, they're going to win the argument no matter what. They're paying for this to be published. But you will come out ahead just by participating and getting your story out there. You'll be better off for doing that than for not participating at all and letting them tell the whole story themselves. So
Which
that's sort of where we
publication?
stand. That was
Which-
Connecticut Public Broadcasting about 5 or 6 years ago. They
That
interviewed
John
us.
Holt guy, or
Yeah,
They were being
but,
paid, they were being paid to,
they gave a grant to Connecticut Public Broadcasting
oh,
to do a story.
who gave,
And-
was the ARC? The ARC
The ARC,
or?
the ARC of
Oh,
Connecticut, or
This was
Disability
not-
Rights Connecticut. I forget who it
don't-
was.
I
Diana,
don't
you
think-
might remember.
I don't
But
think it was Connecticut Public Broadcasting, but I think,
it was something like that. I
yeah,
forget. Diana might remember.
well,
But what I would like to say is the most effective thing to do is get your legislators, get their aides to come and visit your ICF and make sure they aren't just getting a tour of the facility, but make sure that they have the opportunity to meet with a couple of the people who are most severely disabled. Because most of these people only know up to a point in the spectrum. They may never have seen anybody who is as severely disabled as our people are. And that's how we turn things around. They don't know better, and they're not going to know better unless you educate them. And they're going to believe that, yes.
This is Rita Winkler. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I have to tell you that, yes, you are spot on. You would not believe the legislators who have come to Murray and said, oh my God, we thought people like this died. I mean, they had no idea, and they had no idea of the severe behaviors until they met some of our individuals and met the families. I mean, they have no idea. They believe all disabled people are cute little Downs kids that can go get a job. I mean, when they walk into my son's cottage and see the severe disabilities, most of them medical, they're just in shock. I've had grown men start crying. They said, we had no idea. So I'm sorry I interrupted, but that's such good advice, Hugo.
Thank you for interrupting. It was an unsolicited testimonial.
Your point about the press being dangerous is why I said it's a two-edged sword, and I probably was being generous there, but that's why I asked for articles that were sympathetic to our position.
Right.
And say we should have a collection of them, because at least we'll have a sense of who in the media has any sympathy and what they say. Because I absolutely agree on legislators, but you've got this whole idea in people's minds about institutions that you described legislators having. And that takes more than just getting to the legislators so they'll understand it. People have to see the picture.
Okay. We're going to have to stop this meeting.
Hugo, just one comment.
I would have, go ahead.
Sorry. I just want to add on, for a visual, you're talking about having these pages and stuff together. I spent the money and had Appendix J printed out. This is like, if you remember telephone books, this looks like a telephone book. When I've walked into offices, I just set that down on their desk and say, this is it. This is the rules and regulations we have to follow. Nothing like this exists in the community, just to make the visual. But anyway, sorry, go ahead, Hugo.
So I was going to say, a lot of people didn't get a chance to speak tonight. I was hoping we'd hear from more of you, but I was wondering if there are people who would be interested in speaking if we have an overflow meeting a week from now, if that would be of interest to anybody. If people speak up, we may do it. If nobody says anything, we probably won't. But I would love to have extend this conversation.
I for one would like to see it continued, mostly because there are two other people from the Home and School Board here, and Rick Wealthstein and Adrian, and we're a little underrepresented, so I could push people again. And can you say how people get access to the recording?
This is Rita. I think it'd be a great idea to continue this conversation, and I'd show up on time.
Thanks, Rita. So would they be able to go to the website and get the recording?
Yes, in a couple of days, a link to it will be on the website.
Okay.
Rita, you have to actually promise, and then people will come, and there'll be another meeting.
I don't think they'll come just for me, but I'd love to hear what everybody else says, but I promise I'll be there.
Okay.
And Rita is one of the busiest people on this call right now.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming, and we'll see about having another meeting, I guess.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay,
Thank
good
you,
night,
everybody.
everyone.
Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
job.